ATV-TALK, the podcast. Sit down with your host industry professional, Leonard Duncan, as the men and women from the ATV world bring their behind-the-scenes stories to life. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And remember, dream big. It could be your story one day.
Brought to you by Take Two Custom Tees, screen printing experience that is dedicated to quality and customer service every time.
Hey Shane, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How you doing, Lenny?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on ATV Talk. I'm your host, Leonard Duncan, and we got Shane, the Hitman Hitt.
How you been, buddy?
I'm doing great. I still doing what I do, still working on ATVs. How about you?
Oh, well, just trying to raise two kids. I about got them done, though. I got one in college now and one that's 16. So he'll be a junior this year in high school. But if they go back to school, so who knows what's going to happen with all that stuff.
Who's going to raise you?
My mom still lives next door.
Somebody keep you in line then, huh?
That's right. That's right. I refuse to grow up.
Well, grown-ups are boring, aren't they?
Yeah, I know. It's not what they all said. When I was little, everybody said they wanted to grow up, and now I growed up, and I'm like, I said what I thought it was going to be.
No, it's not at all what it's supposed to be, is it?
No, it's boring. So stressful. So no, I don't know. It's good though. I've got two kids, and they both stay out of trouble, and they're both into sports, and they ride motorcycles. So it's all good.
Well, you mentioned to me earlier when we were messaging back and forth, you still race. What do you race?
Yeah, no, I race late model dirt cars back here in this area. Pretty much the whole East Coast late model dirt car racing it's pretty popular back here. There's a lot. Really within probably 2 hours of my house, there's 4 or 5 tracks, and they have a lot of big races all the way up and down the East Coast. There's 2 major series. There's the Lucas Oil late model series, and then there's the World of Outlaws late model series. So they're so we try to hit some of those, which those are TV races. But we just basically run locally.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So let's go back in time a little bit. How did Shane Hitt get into ATVs?
It's a buddy of mine bought a 4-wheeler. I had motorcycles, just little CR80 and KX80, and nothing crazy. And then a buddy of mine, Alan, which was my brother's best friend, he had motorcycles too. And then he bought a 4-wheeler, drug in a 4-wheeler one time, and it was just a little Suzuki. I can't remember what it was, like an LT 125 or something. And I rode it, and from that point on, that's kind of all I wanted, And I tried to get my mom and dad to buy me a 4-wheeler, and they kind of drug their feet for a while. And my dad, he had a bar business, him and his buddy. And when they sold the bar, his buddy said, "I'm going to go buy me a 4-wheeler to hunt on." My dad said, "Well, I'll go get me one too." So they went and bought 4-wheelers at the local Kawasaki dealership, and they were just Bayou 300s. And that's pretty much where it started. When he drug that thing home, I sat down on it, and I've never looked back. I took off on that thing 8 o'clock in the morning, and it would be 9, 10 o'clock at night till I got back, or till it broke down, whichever came first.
So how old were you about that time?
I was probably 14, 15 years old when we bought it. We bought it in October, I think, of 85. And it was an 86 model. And I can remember that really good because in West Virginia in 1985, there was a huge flood, and it flooded. The whole state, I think, got flooded, and we had just got it. It was brand new, and one of the roads were flooded. And my dad's like, "Well, that thing's supposed to float. Won't you run that thing through that? Go out there and run that thing through that river and see if it'll float." Well, it didn't float some. So it was always an adventure. So
Well, with a dad like yours, I'm sure, he wasn't worried too
Yeah.
much about you.
No, he wasn't worried about me. So, but that's where it started, and we pretty much went to, our local Suzuki Kawasaki dealer was, it's just a couple miles away. So I was in and out there all the time. And that being my first four-wheeler was the Kawasaki. So I was, naturally I was a Kawasaki fan from the get-go. And it was crazy because you'd walk in there and you'd see posters of Jimmy White and Jackie Meadows and Charlie Shepard. And, from that point on, I was a Jimmy White fan and Jackie Meadows fan, Charlie Shepard, and, crazy, think the years down the road that I'd become friends with all of them and got to race quite a bit with Jackie and some with Charlie, and never really got to race with Jimmy, but obviously became really good friends with Jimmy through his deal with, working at the Mickey Thompson series and the Stadium series and all the tire companies and stuff that he worked for, and still really good friends with Jimmy and Jackie both to this day.
Wow, that's quite some history there.
The crazy thing about it, and I tell Jimmy, I've told Jimmy this, I don't know how many times, when I run into him, and I tell Jimmy, I said, I went to my first national ever was a TT race in Columbus, Ohio. And I went up there basically to watch Jimmy. And lo and behold, poor old Jimmy jumps the start. Says he didn't jump the start, but they said he did. Either way, they kicked him out and he refused to leave. So he got kicked out of the race. I never got to watch him race, So I drove all the way up there to watch the guy that I idolized, and he got thrown out of the race. So I thought, man, that's how that started.
So you knew how to act from then on, right?
Yeah. So Jimmy was a bad influence. So between Jimmy and Donnie Banks, I didn't have a chance.
Well, I was having a conversation with Gary Denton. And he told me that you lived in Virginia and you grew up in Virginia.
Yeah, he don't know the difference.
Wow.
He failed history. No, Gary has been after me. Since I've met Gary, and he knows that anybody from West Virginia, as soon as you say that, it gets them riled up. And Gary learned that years ago. And the other day, I put something on Facebook or something yesterday or the day before, and of course, Gary gets on there and puts, "Oh, that's pretty good from a guy from Virginia." And then my Facebook just blew up all these other people from West Virginia. He's not from Virginia. He's from West Virginia. Gary's like, all these years I thought he was from Virginia. And then these guys just freak out, It's a Gary, though. He likes to keep stuff stirred up.
Well, from what I've heard about Gary in the old days, he kept everybody stirred up.
Yeah, I miss Gary. I still talk to him a little bit from time to time on the phone, and we go back and forth at it on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. And Gary was growing up, he was, the guy. And he didn't back into 8 championships. He won them. And everybody wanted to beat Gary. I wanted to beat Gary. And it got to the point after 3 or 4 years when I got into the pro class, and I didn't want anybody to beat Gary but me. I wanted to be the guy to beat him, but and I don't know, honestly, that, Timmy finally got the championship from him, I think in 95, but I don't know that we ever really beat Gary. Gary just, he just did what everybody does. He got old. So, or older. He was heads and shoulders above everybody. And he was started earlier, and he's a kid from California, and he was out there where all the sponsors was, and he could ride 7 days a week if he had to. He had a lot of advantages on us, but he had a lot of talent too.
He's a smart dude.
He was.
I listened to some of the things, when I was just jumping into being a race mechanic and learning who some of the people were. Gary was one of the first guys at a Mickey's that he'd come riding by on a bicycle, got off his bicycle and introduced himself and shook my hand, and was just, from that day on, the guy's been amazing. He's been just a super great guy.
He was a true champion. And Gary didn't get out there. If there was something going on at the race that he didn't like or he thought was, not safe or whatever. If there was a jump or something, Gary would go over, he'd talk to the promoter and say, maybe you need to change this or change that. And sometimes people give him a little bit of a hard time about it, but he looked out for everybody, and he was a true, he was a champion, and he did everything right. When I was growing up and I would watch what he was doing, I'm like, that's the guy you want to be. He had all the sponsors, his bike was perfect. He didn't make a whole lot of mistakes. Up till I think in 95 when he flipped on the tabletop of Loretta's, I don't know that I ever seen the guy make a mistake. He jumped a start one time in Pennsylvania, and he kind of blamed me for it, but it's kind of funny. He told this story here a while back. I forgot about it. He said that he didn't even know this whole story until that Legends race in Ashtabula in 2000. And I guess maybe me and Donnie and John Scott must have said something to him, but Gary always got the whole shot. He was the best starter ever. And we went to Challenger the weekend before, me and John did, and done a local TT race. And the referee that was there, I can't even remember what his name was. I think it was like Randy May or something. And we told him, said, what are you guys going to do about this Denton guy that always jumps the start? He said, he ain't going to jump the start up here. We're like, yeah, that's what they all say, but they let him get away with it. Man, we went up there the next week for the National, and I don't even know if Gary moved, and they red flagged the race and sent him to the tail. Sent him to the third row. Gary was so mad. And I guess, I don't know if he jumped or didn't jump or whatever, but then of course Gary said, that's your all's fault. You told him. And I'm like, I don't remember telling Randy May that. John Scott told that story, but we might have. I can't remember.
Did Gary come back and win the race?
No, he come back and got fifth. He won the championship that year for sure.
Right.
I don't know where he ended up in the race, but I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't come back and finish somewhere close to the front, because those TTs, Gary was really good. He was solid on motocross and TT both, but there was times on TT where when he was good, he was better than everybody, and we was always trying to figure out what he was doing, but he was just so far ahead of what we was. He was doing all the shock stuff. We're still running stock shocks and stuff, and he had Olin's, shocks on it. And I know that, Wayne Meridian was doing some of that stuff over at PEP. He was shortening his shocks and slugging his shocks and running shorter shocks and longer shocks and different swing arms. And, and he had Wayne Henson. I don't know that you can get much better than that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty cool dude.
Yeah, they had, not only did they have huge, heavy flywheels hanging on one side, they had this huge, heavy clutch basket laying on the other side, and they just stuff that no one else had thought of. They were just ahead of us.
Well, as everybody started catching up, you rode for Curtis for a number of years, and he builds a pretty good product too. Yeah,
we did, and I spent my entire career with Curtis, other than the 1 year that I rode for your brother. I went with Curtis. I think I rode for Curtis for probably about 19 years, something like that. I was probably 17, 18 when Curtis started doing my stuff. And there was a time there, though, when I was riding for Curtis, I'm going to say around 95, 96, 97, I was like the only guy. John Scott had left. Charlie had moved over and was riding for your brother at Duncan. It was pretty much just me, so I had his full attention, and he worked on my stuff, and I wasn't even in those years, 93, 94, 95, really. I was getting good at the TT stuff, but I wasn't no contender for no national championship until probably somewhere around 96. I had a horrible year around 95, I think. And in 96, I was pretty good. And 97, stuff started coming together, and from then on, from those areas, it was me and Timmy and Doug Gust battled for years, and Travis jumped in there one year and won a championship. There was a lot of good riders. If I look back at the era that I came in, I feel like I was kind of lucky, because the factories were in there right. They just left when I started. So I kind of got in, and I got to see that one race that I went to. I got to see factory Kawasaki and Suzuki and Honda with Marty Hart and Mike Coe and those guys, Curtis and those guys over at Honda. And then you had Jimmy and Jackie and Charlie at Cowie, and then Gary was at Suzuki. So it was kind of cool to see all that stuff. And then that stuff went away. And then that's when we got into building all of our own stuff. But I got to ride. It was lucky because I got to ride with like Gary and see those guys, Marty and those guys before me. And then I rode for that 15 years with, with Timmy and Doug and Travis and Jeremiah Jones and Joe Bird and guys that just went forever, Corey Ellis. And then still up to the guys that are racing today. It's crazy. I mean, the guys that I've met and got to watch and ride with, there's really no one left riding the pro class today that I rode with other than, obviously Joe Hetrick. When I had quit and sold some of my Suzukis, I sold them to Joe. And when Joe was just moving up. And it's funny because Joe, every now and then, he'll post a picture of him riding an LTZ 400 Suzuki and still, he didn't even take my stickers or nothing off. My name was still on it, my number, all that stuff, and it's kind of cool to see those pictures when Joel posts that stuff.
What was your final year?
I think the last year that I raced the TTs only, and it was in, I think 2008, I think was the last year. I rode a Honda in 2007 and 8. I had a deal with Honda for TT. In 2007, I think I wrecked and broke my neck and missed part of the year. And then I came back in 2008 because I had a 2-year deal with Honda and rode the TTs in 2008 and lost the championship that year to Harold Goodman on TT by 2 points. Kind of was behind the whole year, got in a wreck at Danville, Virginia, and ended up finishing last there. And it took me the whole year to catch back up. And I finally got ahead of Harold. And then the last race of the year, I think Harold ran second and I ran third. I wasn't very good. And he ended up beating me by like 2 points. And at that point, I kind of decided I wanted to go do some other things. And my kids were starting to grow old. And it's a lot dragging kids back and forth to the races and just traveling and all the years. It was just kind of was tired,
Well, you had a long career,
It was a long time. And there's not a whole lot when I look back that I would change. I mean, I had a lot of fun and I met a lot of good people. And that's the thing that I miss. It's not the races, and probably the last 10 years, me and Timmy Farr would ride together all the time. And we would just go to Florida and go to North Carolina and just go ride all these different tracks and just have a good time. And still today, I love to just go ride. And you get to the racetrack and you're like, man, this really isn't any fun. I mean, when they put that pressure on you and you got to win and everybody expects you to win. And really, I'd put more pressure on myself than anybody, just you always want to do good, and you feel like you're letting everybody down if you do bad. So it was finally, I was like, you know what? I just want to go have fun and go do something different. So I walked away and bought a dirt car and was going to go do that stuff. And kind of did start doing that stuff. And then Timmy called me and said, hey, I'm doing this deal with KTM. You want to come help? So, and that was kind of a relief, it was kind of, you still get to go to the races. You still get to meet people, have fun. You still can ride anytime you want to, but you don't have no pressure. And so I thought, yeah, I'll go do this. This will be good.
You have a good time working on that KTM?
I did. It was fun. And we kind of handpicked our own team and we did the GNCC stuff, which was new to us. It was new for us to go do the series. I mean, I grew up here in West Virginia, hour from Coombs's headquarters, Racer X. I did the GNCCs when I originally started racing. I can remember in like 1988, 89, and those years, I can remember racing all the GNCCs, riding all the motocrosses, riding all the TTs. If there was a race, I was going, and it was, and I liked it. So and it is crazy living where I live in the middle of West Virginia and not racing the GNCCs and going and doing motocrosses and TTs. It just, it was crazy. I mean, I didn't come from a racing family. My mom and my dad didn't race. So it was all new to all of us, but it was fun and we did it as a family thing and we got to travel and spend time together and, not a whole lot I would change about it. It was a good time.
Well, that's why we do it, is because none of us made any money doing it.
No, you're exactly right.
But we had a good time, and we got to see the country, and some of us got to see the world. And didn't you get to go overseas and race a little?
Yeah, we went over and we raced Pont de Vue. I think I went over there 5 times maybe. Originally, I went over there in 1996. Believe this story. Alan Knowles calls me. I'm head of Loretta's and says, "Hey, you want to go to France and run Pont de Vue?" And I'm like, "Dude, I've hardly been out of West Virginia. Now you're asking me to go to France." He says, "Well," he says, somebody was supposed to go and didn't go. I don't remember who it was. He said, "But you're going to be teamed up with Nick Grunland and another kid from Germany named Ralph." I can't remember what Ralph's last name was. And I'm like, "All right, I mean, I guess, He said, "Well, Nick, just follow Nick. He'll get you wherever you need to. He'll figure out everything out." So I said, "All right, whatever." I said, "But imagine me and Nick Grunland on the same bike."
Right.
How do you set that thing up?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, Nick's probably, I don't know, 6'2", 6'4". He's a tall dude. And I have no idea what he weighs. He's got to be well into 200, 220 probably. And here I am at 5'7", 5'8", 150 pounds.
Are you sure you're that tall?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just checking.
So I'm thinking this is crazy, but I went over there and rode, and that was the first time. I'd always wanted to do that, because you guys had so much success over there. I mean, you guys dominated that place forever with Doug Eichner and Mark Earhart. Both were unbelievable riders, and so I'd always kind of wanted to go over there and see that. Of course, I was really close with Randy Howard, and Randy had been, and Randy was a kid out of Florida that rode for you guys. And he always stayed in summers with me, and we were buddies. And I know Randy had been a few times, and Randy was always like, "You got to go." Him and his father Ray, and so I'd wanted to go. And when Alan called me, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go over there and do this or not with Nick Grunland and some guy from Germany. I don't know, and I'm going by myself, but maybe it'll get my foot in the door. So I went, and we did it. We actually ran pretty good. I think we were running about top 5, and we had to stay or go out. Every time I rode the bike, I would go out on the bike and I would get 2-3 laps in, and the bike would get hot late in the race. It was on the last day, last 4-hour session, 3 or 4 hour session, whatever it was. And the bike would get hot and it would start breaking up. And it would finally quit, and I'd have to push it back. 2 or 3 people would help me push it back. Well, Nick could get on it, after sit there for a minute or two, and it'd start right up. Nick could take off. He could ride 4 or 5 laps, never miss a drop. He'd come in and ain't nothing wrong with that thing. And I'd get on 2 or 3 laps and quit, and I'd have to push it back again. And finally, Nick just told me, he said, "Dude, you're just riding it too hard. You're riding it too hard. Slow down." I'm like, huh, that's the first time I was ever told to slow down in a race. But so we ended up finishing 17th, I think, in the race. And the next year, I really had no intentions of going back. And the next year, it was late. The Ralph kid from Germany called me and said, "Hey, you want to come back and do this race again?" I'm like, I never really thought about it. I just assumed that, you guys were with CT and Nick would be coming back. And he's like, "No, they can't come," or something happened. He said, you want to come? He said, if you want to come and bring someone with you and build a bike or whatever. And I'm like, oh, so now I got to build a bike. So I said, all right. I said, that's fine. I'll build a bike. So I built a full legger bike, and Curtis did a 330 kit for it. And I said, well, I'm going back. I'm taking Timmy Farr with me. So we went over there, and we were good. We led the race all the way to about an hour to go, and transmission busted. And I don't remember what we finished, but how that race is. 12 hours is a long time. And I always said after the first trip that I went over there, I said, there's no way in the world I'd ever come over here and do this race with 2 riders. I said, there's no way. That's a lot of riding. You guys did it every year with 2 riders. And I thought you guys were crazy. Mark and Doug could do it, but there's no way. I wasn't trying that. And then we went back, and I think in 98, me and Timmy and Harold Goodman came, and we won in 98. We went back in 99. We went back in 99 and took another complete brand new bike. Well, we seized it in qualifying or hot laps or whatever. So all we had, rather than just pulling off, putting another piston in it or whatever, taking the top end, we took the motor out of the bike that we had last year that we'd sold to a guy he brought to us. And we just took the whole motor out and set in. So now this motor's already got 13 hours on it from the year before. And we made it all the way to about an hour to go, and it broke a transmission. So this motor had almost 24, 25 hours on it. And
hard
we
hours.
thought after that,
That's not easy.
Yeah, hard hours. And we thought, man, why didn't we just change the cylinder? But we were in a hurry and crunched for time, and it was over there. It was just quicker just to swap the whole motor, and never figured we'd ever get that close. But we led all the way back to that. Well, I think it was about an hour to go, and broke again. And I think I went back one more time around 2010 with a deal with when I was working for KTM. Went over there and rode with those guys. And that was good. But the year that we won in 98 was the year that I don't know if you went. I know your brother was there. It was the year Travis and Doug Eichner were teammates, and Travis got hurt.
Yeah,
Travis got hurt early. Like, he might have got hurt in qualifying or something. I can't remember. It was either qualifying, the first session,
I think it was
or
the
Doug
first
Eichner.
session, and Doug had to ride the whole thing.
And he did.
Yep.
He did. I'm like, dude. I mean, every time he come around, and the crazy thing about that was, not knocking Travis, but after the races over there, they're on the podium, and Travis is picking Doug up, holding him up in the air, and I'm thinking, yeah, how hurt are you? I mean, I was like, that's crazy. I mean, you just let that guy do the whole race.
They didn't win it.
No, you guys ended up second.
Wow,
I think.
Good.
Yeah, you guys ended up second. I think we won. Me and Timmy and Harold Goodman ended up winning.
Yeah.
And you guys got second. Doug Eichner got second by himself.
Right.
He damn near rode that whole race by himself. And I was, every time he'd go by, I would shake my head thinking, wow, that guy is nuts. And I think he was pretty wore out after the race. I think they had to give him some IVs or something, but he was done. I mean, he couldn't go no more. But
you don't see my brother get emotional very often, but when he tells the story about that after the race and Doug just collapsing after they took him off the bike, he gets a little misty-eyed, because Doug earned some massive respect from my brother that day. Yeah,
I mean that's the thing, I've thought all these years, and I'm buddies with Doug, and I always thought he was really underrated. I mean, that guy won the Mickey Thompson series. I mean, he won some national championships back here in the open class and stuff. He was a heck of a rider, but it just seemed like he didn't always get the credit he deserved. But man, when it come to heart, I mean, when we went to Mexico, that guy could ride all day long. I mean, he did 12 hours in France by himself against the best riders on the planet. I mean, at that time, me and Timmy and Harold Goodman were three of the best riders on the planet.
Right.
And Doug Eichner, he just hung right in there by himself. You're like, how's the guy still going? But he was a stud.
He won championships in off-road on the West Coast in his 40s.
Yeah.
And his lap times on the last lap were faster than his first lap.
Yeah, he's incredible. He was one of those guys that he would find that extra energy and he would just keep going, and I raced with Doug a lot. And even when we would do that, like the stadium stuff, we would get out and we'd be in heat races or whatever. And I'd see Doug and well, if I can get in front of Doug, I'll be okay. But then when we get to the mains, there was 2 or 3 times we get to the mains and I'm like, man, we one time at Phoenix and I knew it, I led the race at Phoenix for almost the whole time, one of the stadium races. And it was a rough race, had a couple sets of whoops and stuff in it. And I knew it. About the 1 or 2 laps from the end, I heard somebody. I looked over and here comes Eichner. I'm like, doggone it, man. Because, he would just keep going. And I was, of course, I never took that training thing real serious. But, I could ride for a long time. But everybody took that stuff serious. Like Timmy, he would take off and go to Florida and ride all winter and stuff. And I didn't do any of that stuff, I would just show up and ride, I never had my own track. I always had to either go somewhere or a buddy might have a track, and if it was dusty, I couldn't ride because he didn't want to get dust on his house. And if it was raining, he didn't want to ride because he didn't want me to tear it up, knock all his motorcycle ruts down. And so most of my riding was at the races.
That's why you raced every weekend, huh?
Yeah, that's why I tried to race every weekend, and I just like to ride. And still today, every chance I get, I still try to go ride. I mean, probably during this whole COVID-19 thing, there was a motocross track opened up in Pennsylvania called Breezewood, and it's a 3-hour trip from my house. And me and both my kids, we'd load up every Sunday morning and drive up there and ride all day Sunday and drive back. I just like to ride. I mean, and people will see me that remember me from years ago, and they'll pull up and want to race with me. And I'm like, I don't want to race. I just want to go out and hit a few jumps. So, but it's
do my thing. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I just want to go out here and ride. This one, I was riding up there a couple of weeks ago, and I looked over my shoulder, and there was this number 6 right behind me. And so I go a turn or two, and it fell off, and I go another turn or two, and I kind of look over my shoulder, it's right behind me again. And this goes on for about a lap or so, and I thought, what is going on? So I just kind of pulled over. Well, I found out this number 6 was cutting the track on me. Didn't have no clue who it was. And I thought, this number 6 is cutting the track on me. Well, so then I took off, and it disappeared. I picked up the pace and took off and turned around. It was gone, So I come up, my mom and dad went with me that day. And I walked up, and my dad's sitting in the bleachers. He said, I know who was on that number 6. I'm like, who's that? He said, this sitting right beside me. It was a girl. And she'd seen me at Ashtabula at the Legends race last year. And she said, I saw you. She says, I had to ride with you. I'm like, okay. I said, I was getting a little irritated because I didn't know who kept getting who. I mean, who every time I turned around, you was right behind me. So, and it was a girl.
When you were with KTM and doing the GNCC stuff, did you guys have to do any special type prep to keep the water out of those things or to keep them cool enough so that they didn't expire early on you?
We had some early on. We had some overheating issues for sure, and we come up with some oil coolers that we added to them. We ended up, I think, at one point we were running 2 oil coolers on that thing to keep it cool. We never really had any problem getting water in them. Obviously we ran the stock setup with the air filter, and we ran an outerwears over top of it, which is waterproof. And I don't know that we ever had any problems with water getting in the motors or causing them to quit. We did have some serious heating issues that we didn't catch quick enough. That's for sure. We tested for a long time with those bikes. And then we rolled into the first GNCC in Florida that year, and we had a kid named Adam McGill, Kurt McGill, Adam McGill, and Taylor Kaiser, which Taylor was from Florida. And that was, Timmy kind of handpicked him. McGill was from here in West Virginia, close to me. So we had McGill, which was close. He was actually in between me and Timmy. And we thought we could use him for some tests. And Timmy has a house in Florida too. So Timmy worked with Kaiser down there. We had McGill up here we thought we'd work with, but we ended up doing a lot more stuff with Kaiser down there because Timmy was closer to him. And we went to the first race, and we thought if we could get through that sand pit down there in Florida, we'd be okay. And we did. We ran 4th and 5th, I think, down there at the very first race on that thing. And people thought, you guys are going to be good on these things. Then we won the next 3 races in a row. And we went to Loretta's, and McGill had won 3 in a row, and he was going for 4. And about a mile from the finish, leading, his bike quit. And Taylor Kaiser was running second, and his bike quit almost right beside him, both overheated. And then that's when we knew we had some issues. Probably when we got the heating thing figured out, but then the manifolds where the carburetors went in, those things ripped about. We've had to put a new one on every race. Those things would rip a hole in, and then they would suck air. So there was a few little things, but that, if you remember, that bike was the 525. That was the old motor. That was an old KTM motor out of a dirt bike. So that motor had, it was a good torquey motor. It wasn't real fast. It didn't make it's not something you really want to run on a TT race or something like that, but it was easy to ride, and it was old, and KTM had just threw it in there. Now, when they come out with the SX model, it was a 450 and a 505. Now that was a newer motor, and that thing made a lot more power. But we never did do any cross country stuff with that. Because it was specifically an SX motor, so they wouldn't let us do that thing. But and still to this day, I think that is the best production 4-wheeler made. That SX 450 505 KTM out of all the 4-wheelers I've ever rode. I've got a Yamaha now that I ride just about every weekend with just a set of shocks on. It's got a pipe and an air filter on it. Nothing major done to it. It's got a Vortex ignition. But stock for stock, that 505 KTM SX is hands down way better than this Yamaha that I've got, I think. I mean, if you were going to go out and do that production class like they're doing at the Nationals now, I mean, I think it's a way better four-wheeler. You know, it's wide. It come with a kill switch. It had Nerf bars on it, but KTM pulled the plug on it.
Well, I think they were devoting their resources, you know, to the Supercross thing and the motorcycle side of it at that point. And I know that the 525 that I got to work on in the Polaris, when Eichner did a little bit of that before he switched. Yeah, that was the first thing. I took it out the first weekend in the dunes, getting to test ride that IRS tank, and I overheated it immediately. So I knew going in, we have to fix this. So I went a little different route. Instead of using oil coolers, I did shrouds and changed the cooling system so that it would, I took the thermostat out of it and took the alternate line off the cylinder off of it and just ran a big giant super cooler on it. And that seemed to solve our heating issues for what we did out here.
Yeah, see, I think the Polaris had a different radiator, though. It seemed like the KTM had a bigger radiator than the Polaris did, because I remember when we first got those bikes, hearing that they couldn't, that it was overheating in the Polaris models, because I think that was the same motor. I think
it was just identical motor.
Yeah, it was the same motor. I remember stories about that. You know, they said when it come out in the Polaris that they couldn't keep it cool. You know, it was overheating big time. And I think that I'm pretty sure that the radiator and stuff in the KTM was quite a bit bigger. But I mean, it still had some heating issues that we had to overcome. But I was
always kind of leery on where they did the testing on that stuff. They had to have done it in a cooler climate than they were used to when they came over here and started working on them.
Well, they started on a lot of that stuff. I mean, it started in Austria, but they brought that bike over here, and we did a lot of that testing over here. And I'll be honest with you, you know, I worked for Honda and did a lot of the TRX 450 stuff. Timmy was working for Honda doing the 450, the TRX 450, and that was about a 4-year project. And then Timmy had got hurt, and Bruce called me to come in because Timmy was hurt. So we ended up spending a bunch of time with the Honda stuff. And then when we moved over to the KTM to do the KTM testing, it's a whole different ball game what KTM was doing to what Honda was doing. I mean, when we go to like HPCC for Honda to test, I mean, we'd wear a backpack and we'd have all this like a laptop in it. And then they would build on the grab bar, they would have computer stuff in that. And these Hondas that we were riding, they had wires everywhere, testing, you know, flex in the frame, testing heat in your calipers, heat in your rotors. I mean, they tested everything. KTM, they come over and they throw you on the bike. In the Honda, they would say, all right, you're going to go out and ride this thing for 30 minutes. And if you came in at 20, 25 minutes, well, then that test didn't count. I mean, you had to redo that whole thing. So, I mean, I know at one time the grab bar was bent where the computer was setting, and we're like, dude, that grab bar is bent down. We're trying to tell these Japanese guys that don't speak very well. They hardly speak any English. And they're like, oh, no, it'll be fine. We're like, okay, whatever. We're about 20 minutes into the ride. Timmy was on it at this point, and it finally snapped off, and it went down and wrapped up in the chain and the sprocket and the axle. I mean, it destroyed this thing. These Japanese go running across the field. We were in Georgia when this test happened. We were one of Donnie Banks's tracks. It was a Paradise Speedway in Macon, Georgia. And so these Japanese guys, they see it happen. You know, Timmy's on the bike. He don't know that it fell off. And they go running across this field, and they get him stopped. And it destroyed all the stuff. And, well, Timmy come back over, and we looked at it. Well, we tried to tell him. And said, well, it looks like we'll get tomorrow off, because there's no way they're putting this thing back together. All these wires. I mean, there's 1,000 wires in this thing. There ain't no way. Them guys stayed up all night long, and they put that thing back together. 8 o'clock the next morning, they were ready to go. We thought, man, we thought we were going to get a day off. But
that's awesome.
they put her back together. And then, but going back to where we were at with KTM, they'll just bring you over a bike and say, all right, here it is. Go ride the thing. And you may go ride 1 lap, 2 laps, come in and say, I like this, I don't like that, or whatever. And then they'll change it or whatever. And it's not the way Honda did things. I mean, they were straight up, and you had to be there, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. They would give you lunch. KTM, I mean, we'd go and test for a little bit, and at lunchtime we'd go to the Mexican restaurant and get drunk and come back and produce some more. So it was just a whole different deal.
Wow.
Austrians are different than the Japanese guys.
Well, it's kind of hard to, it's kind of hard to argue with Honda quality.
No, you never could. Their stuff has always been the best. The Jap stuff, they compete against each other so much. And realistically, I think until Roger DeCoster went over to KTM, I don't even think they ever, the Japanese companies, they didn't even consider KTM a threat. And once Roger DeCoster went over there, things changed.
It changed the whole ballpark. I'm surprised that you liked that KTM so much. I never liked them. I mean, everything that I worked on them, I mean, maybe I was just too diehard, Honda, or too diehard the way the Japs did it. I could just never get into the KTM at all.
I did. I mean, I obviously I was a diehard Honda fan after all those years of riding Hondas and working for Honda. The Honda quality, you don't beat it. The reliability. I mean, you just ride them forever. They just don't break unless you tear them up. But the KTM thing, I liked it. I mean, I liked it. The only thing I ever had against the SX model was it vibrated. But I mean, I liked it. I mean, it had wide A-arms on it, had an axle on it. It came with the kill switch and Nerf bars and stuff. And I've said all along, I mean, if they would bring it out, to me, they brought it out at the wrong time. It was just at that point, ATV racing had really took off. The factories were all into it. You had Suzuki and you had Kawasaki, you had Cannondale, or Can-Am. They were all into it at that point. And then KTM brings that thing out, and they were at, I think, around $10,200 or something in a Honda. And a Honda was maybe 6,200 or something. Right. But still, if you looked at what you were getting, I mean, you could jump on that thing and go to the track. And the Honda, it's a good bike. You're not going to race that thing with stock shocks and stock A-arms and stock tires. And so, I mean, I don't know. But people could, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe I kind of like that KTM. I'm kind of biased to it because we worked on it. We tested with it and did a lot of work with it.
That's it too.
Yeah, but we worked with that Honda too, with Bruce for a long time, and I can remember me and Timmy was in Mexico one time with 450 Hondas. We were pre-running, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we're like on a 100-mile trip getting ready for Baja, and we're out in the middle of nowhere, and there's a guy broke down in a buggy. And we pull up to the guy, and we took fuel with us because we couldn't make it that far without fueling up. So we stopped to fuel up, and it was a guy broke down, and the guy comes over and we asking him, like, what's wrong with your buggy or whatever. It was an old Volkswagen pre-runner buggy or something. And he was like, oh, we're not sure. We got help coming. He says, when you get into this trail, can you tell them where we're at? And we're like, dude, it's going to be all we can do to get there before dark. And we didn't have headlights on these bikes. So we had to go hard. And then the guy looks at the four-wheelers we're riding. He said, what are those things? I'm like, well, they're four-wheelers. He says, is that new Honda they're supposed to be coming out with? We're like, I don't know what you're talking about. We have no idea what I don't know anything. And I said to the guy, he had on a West Virginia shirt. And I said, where are you from? And he said, West Virginia. I said, well, where at? And he said, Elkins, which is literally 15 minutes from me. And I run into this guy in Mexico. I mean, clean down in the middle of nowhere. And I told the guy, I said, we'll tell your pre-run buddies or whatever where you're at. But I mean, you guys are like right in the middle of this trail. You're 50 miles from going backwards and you're 50 miles to go the other way. I said, so, and it'll be dark before we can get there. I mean, I don't know, some of that pre-running stuff we done down there wasn't smart. That would have been 03 probably.
Right.
The bike didn't get released till 04, so that would have been 02, 03, somewhere in that area, but before the bike was ever released. So
we were fortunate enough to get one early as well. And we didn't get to go do much test riding on it, but we got to make some pieces and bits for to sell, so that the day they released it, we had parts on the shelf for it, which was
I know there was a few companies they let those things slide out to for that kind of stuff. You know, I'm sure you guys and you know, some of the other companies, they would let them slide out too. But we that thing was a big deal when they released that thing.
That was awesome.
And we caught a bunch of crap over it. Me and Timmy did, because we were HPCC testing this thing and on their outdoor motocross track at this facility that Honda has out in the Mojave Desert. And their supercross track is there too. And so we're testing this thing, and Timmy goes out and he wrecks and he dislocates his shoulder. And so they take him to the hospital. One of the motorcycle test riders, I don't know, I can't remember who it was. He was there when it happened. And so he's buddies with Wayne Henson of all people. So he goes boating and he tells Wayne Henson, he says, "Hey, I was out at Honda this week and one of your buddies got hurt." And Wayne's like, "What are you talking about?" He said, one of those boys that rides that 4-wheeler for you guys." And Wayne's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." He said, "Yeah, that new 4-wheeler they're coming out with." So he ended up telling Wayne that Timmy got wrecked and got hurt on this new 4-wheeler they were developing. So then it kind of got out. Well, then Bruce, we'd signed all these papers. You know, we're not allowed to talk about this stuff, you know, to nobody. You know, and getting into a Honda facility like that, I mean, you had to go through 2 gates to get in there. So we weren't allowed to talk to anybody about it, and we had to keep it quiet for a couple of years. And then this thing got out, and Bruce was mad at me and Timmy, thought we said something. I'm like, "I never said nothing to nobody," you know. And Timmy's like, "I never said anything to anybody." And it was probably 6 months or so before, you know, they finally figured out what had happened. But yeah, Bruce was mad at us, and we're like, "Man, we didn't say anything. I promise you, I didn't say nothing to nobody," you know. But I mean, they keep that stuff covered up.
I didn't get to spend very much time with Bruce, but every time I dealt with him, it was an enlightening experience.
Yeah, he was a good dude, and he was no nonsense, and he was straightforward. If Bruce told you something, that's what it was. So I mean, if you signed a contract with Bruce and he said he was giving you 8 4-wheelers, you were getting 8 4-wheelers, not 7, not 9. You were getting 8. So don't call and ask him for no more. You know, and this is what you got on your parts allowance or whatever. And he was a good dude, and he didn't. I tried to be pretty much serious with him, you know, and he was, and I liked him. He was a good dude. When I went to Mexico one time to do Baja with him, I think this was in 2006, maybe 2006 or something. I went down and he teamed me up with Wayne Matlock. Me and Wayne Matlock rode together, and I think it was 2006. And I brought another buddy with me from home to mechanic with me and stuff. And we're right in front of the hotel. And I just got off from riding. I was riding that first 50 miles or whatever to start the race. And so I rode it and rode back to the hotel. And I got off, and me and Bruce was talking about some stuff. And I said, "I'm thirsty." And the guy that was with me, and Bruce turned around, there's a liquor store there. He said, "Well, go down there and get you something to drink and put on your expense report." He says, we cover all that stuff. You know that. And the guy that was with me, he was just a kid. He was like, "Well, if Shane goes to that liquor store, he's coming back with something size water." I'm like, dude, easy now. You can get me fired before the race starts. But Bruce laughed, you know, and it kind of caught me off guard, because Bruce, he was usually all business, you know, and he started laughing. I thought, woo, I figured I was going to get in trouble over that one.
No, when you're down in Mexico, he's a totally different guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was a good dude. I mean, anytime I called him and emailed him, and in this industry, it is hard. I mean, if you call somebody or try to get a hold of somebody, I mean, a lot of times they just don't get back with you. Bruce, it didn't matter. He always got back with you. You know, I mean, I've worked with a lot of sponsors over the years, and he was one of them that, you know, if you called him or you emailed him back then, we did a lot of email. He got right back to you, and he always had an answer for you, whether you liked it or not. He let you know.
Well, that's all you can ask for, because then you know where you stand, and if it's no, it's no. If it's yes, it's hey, then we're on.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was the good thing about Bruce. And
Well, that
he loved.
Go ahead.
And he loved Baja. I mean, that was Bruce's deal. I mean, that was all I mean, I don't say it's all he cared about, but Baja was definitely was his passion, you know.
Did you ever get to see him ride?
Well, it's sometimes when we were testing, he would jump on like a dirt bike and stuff and ride. And he was a good rider.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, he would surprise you because even in those times, you know, I mean, he was, you know, Bruce was about my height. I think he might have even been shorter than me, and he had a little belly on him, you know. And I'm like, this guy can't ride, but he could. I mean, he'd jump right on, he'd get after it, and you're like, whoa, I didn't see that one coming.
Right.
So, but you got to figure too. I mean, thinking about all the riding he done. I mean, because every time they come up with a dirt bike or they tested something, you know, I mean, he was one of the guys that would jump on it and ride, you know. So he was,
even as an older guy, he still had to know what it was doing so that he could talk to the riders and help them come up with a better fix.
Yeah. And he did. I mean, he was good. I mean, there was a lot of times you'd see him hop on Johnny Campbell's stuff and take off, you know, and you're like, man, you better not wreck that bike. He's going to need that thing.
Well, yeah, little did you know they had another one somewhere else.
A whole bunch of them. We went to Baja, I guess, in 2000, and we were working for Honda at this point, and we went to Baja to do a deal, and I'm pretty sure it was part of a deal with Wes Miller. I'm almost 100% sure it was, because about any time I was down there, I got drugged down there by Wes Miller, and we decided to do it was the Lone Star frame that Wes Miller got, and we was going to put an XR650 dirt bike motor in it. And so we did, and we had the motor built, and we built it all back in Ohio. Mark Baldwin built it all back at his shop, and we get out there and we take it through tech. Well, the thing blew up in tech. It just got hot and overheated, and it blew up going through tech. And we're like, something's wrong. I mean, everything was brand new. And so we get to looking at it, and we get out the manual, and we're looking at it, and all the oil lines, everything's hooked up right according to the manual. So we go to pull it out, and we went over and talked to Bruce, because we knew Bruce, and a couple of the Japanese guys that were working on the 450R project was there, because they had flew over, worked on that project, and came to Baja because they always like to go to Baja. And they're like, so we knew them, and they come over and we told them we had a problem. So they helped us all night long, pull the motor out, and Bruce had give us one of Johnny's pre-run bikes. He said, take the motor out of Johnny's bike and go put it in your four-wheeler. So that's what we did. So the Japanese guys come over, and they pulled the motor out, and we stuck it in. Well, we got to hook it up. We realized that two of the oil lines were backwards. And we get out the manual, and like the manual says this is the way they go. But if you're doing it in the dirt bike, there's no way you could get the lines backwards because of the length of them. So, but when you're putting it in a four-wheeler, we had to make the lines. So we made them, and we did it according to the manual. We went over and showed Bruce. We said, Bruce, this manual's wrong. Bruce is like, that manual's not wrong. That manual's 4 or 5 years old. There's no way that thing's wrong. So we showed it to him, and he looked at it, and he's like, that manual's wrong. He said, I can't believe that. All these years, no one ever noticed that. He said, and then he stood there for a few minutes. He says, it wouldn't matter anyway. You couldn't do that in the dirt bike. So right. He was right. I mean, you couldn't do it in a dirt bike because the lines would have never reached. But when you put it in a four-wheeler and you're doing it all new and you make up the lines, you just do it the way the manual does. And of course, it blew right up. But that bike had already had like 1,000 miles on it. We went ahead and stuck it in the ATV and ran it. It worked out. So
that's so cool.
Yeah,
How'd you guys end up doing?
I don't know. We finished, I'm sure, because we were always way too stupid to quit. But I don't know how usually with Wes, we was always third, fourth, fifth, somewhere in that area. We just never really could get over that hump. It's hard to win down there if you're not fully with Honda and have all their support. The 2 years that I was really good in Mexico was both years that I was with Honda. And the 1 year Timmy and Doug had won, and that might have been 03 when the 450 was getting ready to come out. It came out in 04, so that would have been 03 probably. Timmy and Doug was together. Timmy Farr, Doug Eichner, and I'm not sure who else was with them that year. And I was they had two teams. I was on the other team, and one of the guys that Bruce had put on the team, which I can't remember who it was, he wrecked and broke his collarbone right at the beginning of the race. So we were way down, and we'd actually got caught back up, but it was a loop. and it went down, and I rode the bottom part of the loop, but there was no way for me else to get back up to where the guy was that was supposed to get on the broke his collarbone, because he started the race and he was supposed to finish the race, and there was no way to get anybody back up there. So we were just stuck, so whoever got on after me had to ride it all the way to the finish, which were 500 miles or something, which was way too far. And by that point, it was dark, because at one point they said, well, we'll just bring this Honda helicopter down here and put you in that helicopter, take you back up there. But they had to, Honda grounds those Mexico actually grounds the helicopters once dusk sets in.
Right.
So I mean, it was too late. I mean, if I would have been like earlier on, they could have got me back up there, but they're like, we have to ground the helicopter at dusk. So there's no way we can do that. So we ended up third that year. And then the year that I rode with Wayne Matlock, and the other kid's name was Chad Proul, we was another deal with Honda. And we were really good that year. That was one of the years where everything went perfect. Didn't have any problems. So, and that's rare in Mexico.
Well, it's rare anywhere,
Yeah.
You don't have many seasons that you can just bank with no issues. That 0405 TRX 450R platform is still, in my opinion, the best desert machine you'll ever race, because I
think it's still better than the new one. When we tested that thing, we tried to get them to do a couple different things with them. We tried to get them to change the transmission gearing in the 0405 before it ever came out. And we got American Honda to change that, and then we changed to I think it was the FCR carburetor on the 0405 model. And then there was a few other changes. Well, then it goes back to Japan. And then when it come back from Japan, they changed that stuff back. They wouldn't run that. I think it was the FCR carburetor said it would stick in cold weather or whatever. Well, lo and behold, I think 2006 or something, the bike come with it. But that was one of the very first things that they changed on it when we went to Baja, when we introduced the bike, was they changed that carburetor. So, yeah.
In the beginning, we ran Edelbrock's. We ran the Edelbrock platform for the first few years, but we run exclusively the FCR stuff now. And we won 18, 19, and I think they're leading the points this year on the same platform that I built for the Simmons brothers in Best in the Desert. So that platform, even as old as it is still awesome.
Yeah, that's a good bike. And, I can't believe that Honda doesn't release that thing and send it out there. I mean, Yamaha's the only one doing anything right now, and it's kind of sad,
Yeah, but you have one of those Yamahas. What do you think of it?
I don't know. I mean, I bought it cheap. I bought it off Craigslist for like $3,000 or something, and I put some shocks on it, and put the Vortex ignition on it and a pipe, and it's okay. I mean, realistically, it's mainly stock, and I like it, but the Yamaha fits me because it's kind of a small bike, so I fit it real well. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, really, to get a Honda, I would have to do so much to it, to feel comfortable. You'd have to put A-arms and axle and stuff on it, and I just wanted something that I could just go ride. And it's crazy because, I mean, I can go to motocross tracks and jump everything on the track, and the way it is. And I mean, I'll go to motocross tracks still today, and my kids, they ride their dirt bikes, and their friends will show up and they're like, whoa, dude, I can't believe your dad can ride like that. And I still just go out there and hit everything wide open, and it's good. It's not really fast, but it's smooth, rideable power, which is probably good because it allows me to ride a little bit longer before my arms pump up. But I have a good time,
Well, I like that motor. I mean, there's some things on the platform that I don't like, but that's a good, strong motor. The tranny's really good. If you run the older style clutch in it, in the newer version, God, it's a good deal. I worked with Mike Sloan in 2018 when he won the Works title out here in the West Coast, and we have that we have that platform down pretty good. It makes good power, and look at Chad. Chad's killing it on that thing,
Yeah, well, the one I've got, I've had it for quite a few years now, and I've never put a clutch in it. And I don't know how much time's on that thing. That I can't believe that clutch is still going. The only thing about it is it always pukes a little bit of oil out of it. I've never put another external tank or nothing on it. I just let it puke oil out, put more in it. But it does run good. The transmission, I've never had any problems with it. It always shifts good, and the clutch, I think every time I ride it, I'm like, man, I'd have been through 15 clutches on a Honda by now. But I haven't had any problems with it. I don't, the A-arm setup, there's something weird about that deal, that front end, I had to get a different set of upper A-arms, but it seems like it's okay,
They're not bad for the general public. They're great bikes. You put an ECU, a pipe on them, and the guys can go ride them anywhere and go have a great time with them. You just don't have any issues with it.
No, and it's reliable, and that's all I wanted. I just wanted something I didn't have to work on. I got 2 race cars that I get to work on all the time. Way too much work and way too much money. But so when I want to go ride, I just want to jump on this thing and I just want to go ride. And so I don't want to work on it. I'm getting lazy.
That's awesome. Well, Shane, I'd love to continue this, but unfortunately, I have another appointment this evening. Would you be inclined to sit down and talk with me again?
No, anytime. You just let me know. Like I say, during the week, I'm usually free. Weekends, I'm crazy racing during the summer anyway. But no, it's been good. It's been good talking to you. It's good to see you. I miss going to California. I don't ever get out there very often. I did make it out to Anaheim to the first Supercross this year, but I definitely miss being at the races, and I miss meeting all the people. It was a lot of fun.
Well, like I was telling you in our messaging, this is the first year in 30 years that I haven't traveled, and it's all new to me, being home and being a home husband. Like some men are used to being home every weekend to do things for their wife or to be around, and for me, it's culture shock.
Yeah, I bet it is. It is me, and I don't know what I would do. I've got 2 race cars that I get to go race with and stuff, and I got 2 kids that they're wide open all the time. So I'm never for a guy that doesn't have a job, I'm always busy. So, but like I said, anytime you guys want to talk or whatever, just let me know. I sent you my number, so I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
My son Danny is still a huge fan of yours and wanted me to make sure that I said hello, and that he was bummed. He's going to be here in 2 days to come and visit. He lives in Idaho now, but he's going to be here in 2 days, and he wanted to be here when we did this, but unfortunately you're busy on the weekends, and that's the only time he had. So
I've talked to him a few times on through Messenger or whatever on Facebook and stuff. Now, is he the one we stickered up at Loretta's?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
But he was a little guy.
He was a little guy, that's for sure. I couldn't even tell you what year that would have been. That would have been back in the 90s for sure.
Yes, because he was born in 91.
Yeah, so it had to have been like 95, 96, 97, somewhere in that area.
I think it was 95 or 96.
He probably doesn't remember us stickering him up, does he?
I'm sure he remembers it. He loved all you guys, and to this day he still does. He just, he still tells me the little stories that over and over again. But still, getting to go back there and hang out with you guys is the highlight of his life.
Yeah,
that's what you got to figure. We got to go do things that normal people in the world don't get to experience. I tell stories to people I meet, and they can't believe you did what, where, with who, and they don't know what a 4-wheeler is, or they don't know that you can race something. It's some stuff.
Yeah, we've been blessed, man, and we've been lucky. I can't say that I'd change a whole lot. You know, I've got to go a lot of places. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it seems like that every place I've ever been, I've had a gear bike with me. You know, I mean, I might have went on vacation, but you know, but some way or another, I took my gear bike with me to either ride or go to a race, and then I went on vacation or whatever. But I mean, we've traveled all over, you know, all over Europe. I went to, you know, New Zealand and Australia, and obviously up in Canada, and covered every inch of that Baja, Mexico place. But I don't know. I mean, it's been fun, and it's I've learned a lot, you know, and it's pretty much made me who I am. So it's been a good time.
Well, do me a favor, say hello to the family. Make sure you give your mom and dad a hug for me, and tell them that I said hello. And when we talk next time, I want to know the difference between how you set that TT bike up so well to how you set your dirt track car up.
Well, we can go through it.
Well, I need some tips still, you know, because I'm still doing this. You know, I still got to go do some races and work on some machines. So I'm going to need some good tips here and there.
I had that TT thing figured out pretty good. So, and and that TT, I loved it, you know, and I love, like, and it's like the dirt car thing, shocks and springs, man. I like messing with that stuff, and that's where it's at. So we'll get you up to speed.
Marty Hart sure thought the world of your setup in 2000 back there at Baja.
Yeah, I remember Marty being there.
He was impressed.
Yeah. And Marty was another one, you know, he's another guy that, you know, I never really, you know, the only time I ever met Marty was at the Legends race in 2000. Grew up, you know, idolizing that guy, you know, I mean, those guys were special, and, you know, Marty raced for a long time, but I never really got to meet him other than at Ashtabula that year. And I'm glad they did that. That was a good time.
Well, so am I. It reminds me, I got to call Curtis. Bo Barron gave me his phone number and told me to call him because he's wanted to meet my dad for a number of years. Because back in the day, he used to buy parts from my dad back before he was, you know, the famous Curtis Sparks. And so I got to call him and set that up.
Yeah, I seen here a while back the Pharaohs. I don't know, Justin and Joseph Farrow.
Yep.
They were posting some stuff on Instagram or something, and had some pictures of your dad or some of your dad's stuff or something.
They bought a whole pile of stuff from him.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, that goes way back. And so that was pretty cool.
Well, I'm looking for the guys that rode the rigid three-wheelers in the 70s when Pops was doing it. Into the early 80s, you know, the rigid, the old school.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hunt a few of those guys down to talk to, hear some of their war stories back in the days when they didn't have any suspension.
Yeah, that's before my time. The guy that would probably point you in the right direction is that John Pellin. He was a three-wheeler nut, and he's all into that three-wheeler stuff. That stuff was before me. You know, I was. I mean, I'm glad I never had a three-wheeler, because no way I'd still be alive.
Well, back in 1977, when they published the first three-wheeler magazine, I was at that photo shoot, just a dumb 10-year-old kid on his bicycle getting in the way of the camera guy, doing things I shouldn't have been doing while they were trying to shoot that article, and my dad's on the cover.
Man. That's pretty cool. That's good stuff.
Crazy history right there. You know, I mean,
yeah.
I had no idea I was gonna do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And look what your dad and your brother got you into.
Mostly dad, you know, mostly dad. You know.
Yeah.
Lauren didn't help. I mean, he didn't deter me from doing it, but
that's right.
Hey, you want to go to that race? Here's the keys to the truck. Go. See you later.
That's right.
You know, you want to know how that works? No problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, hey, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for taking the time with me. We really appreciate you spending some time with ATV-TALK. Tell everybody about it. We're going to launch the first episode soon. So it hasn't even hit the ground yet. I'm I'm booking episodes now so that when I finally launch it, I don't have to stress and not have enough episodes. But I'd love to sit and talk with you more.
All right, man.
I'll be back with you.
You let me know anytime, buddy. I appreciate it.
Hey, reach out to Timmy and a couple of the other guys and tell them I'm looking for them.
I will. I'll be on them.
All right, brother. Shane, it's an awesome time. I haven't seen you for 20 years, and you still look like the same kid.
I don't know about all that.
Trust me, you do. You just still look like the same guy. So you don't have white hair like me.
Oh, it's getting there. It's just this iPad's not very good.
All right, brother. You have a great night. Thanks again.
All right.
And we'll
Good talking to you, Lenny.
My pleasure.
All right, buddy.
Thank you so much. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
The team here at ATV-TALK would love your feedback. Please email us at hello@atvtalkpodcast.com.
Duncan Technologies International. More than 33 years in the industry building racing programs and ATVs around the world. We build winners.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, don't forget to rate us on all the available platforms and share us with your loved ones. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook for more ATV Talk news. See you next time.